Hello everybody and welcome to the stream. How are you doing? It is a Wednesday. I'm recording a Private Citizen episode, which is of course a little bit impromptu. Well, impromptu, I mean it was going to be today, but it wasn't scheduled because I'm just in a world of hurt and pain as far as shit that's just happening right now. Hey Mode 7, how are you doing? Nice for you to be along. Just a lot to do. Like either at work and privately. Just a lot going on, so I can't really plan. Hey Astral C, welcome. I'm well. I just got a lot to do, but it's just okay. It's just that's the way it is. So can't plan these things at the moment. As soon as I'll have a clue, I'll get the streaming schedule updated again, fab.industry/stream. But for now we're just recording a podcast. And tonight we're going to talk about something I wanted to talk about for a long time, which is Squirrel, Steve Gibson, Steve Gibson Squirrel. SQRL authentication, website authentication system. I've had that on the docket for I don't know, a year now or something, or close to a year. And I'm just gonna do it now. I'm just gonna do that now. It's available in F-Droid, of course it is. I'm gonna probably get into like the possibility of that thing being adopted. But first I want to kind of explain what it is. Pretty cool. Anyway, let's get this party started. Let's get this show on the road. As always, because I'm recording a podcast, I will not be interacting with Twitch chat as much as I usually do when I play games or whatever. Just to keep it manageable for the people that just listen to this afterwards. And there goes my microphone. I really need to like a new holder for this or something. I could probably fix this, given time and actual motivation. But I will of course listen to your feedback and take that into advisement, take it into the show, even while I'm doing the show, as I see fit. Let's put it that way. Great opening to a Korn song. Let's get this party started. Korn, I've never been a fan of Korn. It's just not my kind of music. But fun fact, the current drummer of Korn, you can't tell because they're all wearing masks, but the current drummer of Korn is the son of Max Weinberg, the drummer of the E Street Band. And he, in fact, when Max was on the tour, when Max was busy with Conan O'Brien, because he was leading Conan O'Brien's house band and he couldn't be on the E Street Band tour with Springsteen, I think that was in Düsseldorf as well. I saw Max Weinberg drum for Springsteen, and he's a very talented drummer. I mean, he can pretty much drum anything, I think. Hey Centuri, how are you doing? Looking forward to using Squirrel. Yeah, I wonder if that, I personally don't have any use for it because I don't have anything you can log into on my websites. But let's get into that. Let's do this. Let's record this show. And then I need to get it out because it's late. And then I'm just gonna, once it's recorded, as I've been, at some point I'm gonna do another, like the whole recording process stream. But today I'm just gonna record it and then move you, raid you to somebody maybe, and then finish editing the show and then putting it out and such. But anyway, let's get in. Let's, as Pestily says, let's crack straight into it. But before we do that, we should probably do a test. I wonder if Pestily does tests when he does things. I bet he does because he's just such a professional. So I'm prepared to bet that he tests everything. Is a second shirt on the way? Aim to misbehave. I'm about to earn a second. Oh, I kind of did promise to do that, right? I don't have one designed, but I should be doing that. I just have so much on this month. I really should have a look at like Patreon if I can like what happens if you earn that but there isn't another shirt design. Can you do me a favor, Centurio? Can you shoot me an email, right? contact@fab.industries. Just shoot me an email and put in like, I'm Patreon shirt. I'm earning like a second shirt. What are we doing about this? And I will try to sort that out. I don't know if I can get it designed beforehand, but I'll see if there's something I can do where like if I get it later, I can still get it to you. We'll sort that out. We'll get that. Shoot me an email. Just putting the idea back into your head. That's very important, but I also want you to get that shirt. Professional. So I'm prepared to bet. You've got it down, right? That's what you need to do. I put myself up. I have so many plates in the air at any given time that I just forget shit. Oh my God, this week was horrible. I was supposed to do I need to do some maintenance at home for my dad on his my dad's IT infrastructure, so to speak. And I was set it all up, right? And I was I'm going to do this on Monday and we'll be there all day. It was he was going to cook for me and everything. And I completely forgot. I had fun on the weekend. I just let work be work on the weekend. I was out on the weekend, had a lot of fun. I completely forgot. So he didn't even ring me up because he was he's probably busy. So I just looked at my calendar halfway through there. I was holy shit. So I rang up. So I have to do that tomorrow. Oh God, that was horrible. I'm not a good son. I fear I'm not a good son. What is Arch doing? Oh, Arch is happily compiling. That's good. Right. Got everything tested. Let's get this show on the road. Everybody, let's do this. Let's crack straight into it. You're listening to the Private Citizen, the podcast, defending your right to have something to hide. This is episode 84 for Wednesday, the 1st of September, 2021. Steve Gibson's Squirrel. Hey everybody, my name is Fab, come to you live from Düsseldorf in Germany. No, that is not a euphemism. I also don't know if Steve Gibson, I don't know, today I keep calling him Steve Gibson. I'm sorry, Steve. I don't know if Steve has an actual squirrel. What we're talking about today is SQRL, Secure, Quick, Reliable Login, which is something I have meant to talk about for, I don't know, I was thinking before I started the show, maybe a year now. I've had it on the list for a long time. I just wanted to talk about it, spend an episode on it. This is going to be one of my OTG episodes. So we're gonna do that today. And that's pretty much it. Before we get into it, I wanted to quickly mention that I will be going on another hiatus this month for about 2 weeks with the show. The situation has come up where I'm gonna be on the road for a while without pretty much the ability to. I mean, I could get it working that I can record podcasts and I might be able to, but to release them. But it's really not it's just such an unsecure proposition that I said I have a lot to do anyway, so I'm not gonna put myself through that stress. I'm just gonna pause those 2 weeks and I will tell you beforehand so you're not where was Fab that week. And I'll make it up to you in episodes. I keep promising that. I will. I will do that. I will do that. So there'll be some extra episodes for those people who are actually, financially supporting the show, who I feel very much, I feel like responsible to be honest. So I'll be doing that. I mean, I would be feeling bad anyway, but this is now kind of a bit of a job because I'm actually making a little bit of money of it. So it's kind of a job. So I do feel responsible. So we'll get that done. And I will also get a second shirt made. I've committed to that for the Patreon supporters. So there's the highest Patreon tier. I think it's $30 a month. If you subscribe to that for 3 months, I think it's 3 months. I should have looked this up before the show, really. You get a shirt. Like I made a shirt for the show. It's the only way to get the shirt. I have one, but the only way to get it, that was like a test sample. The only way to get it really is directly from Patreon. And they ship they produce it, they ship it. It's really awesome. Like for creators, it's great. You just have to upload the design. And we have somebody actually in Twitch chat right now. I'm streaming this live on Twitch as I record this, as always. Centurio Purchase is coming up to his second shirt. So, and we want to have a second shirt. And I've already talked to Centurios, and I think he had a great idea. He wanted a Aim to Misbehave shirt, which is, of course, the famous quote from Malcolm Reynolds from Firefly. Actually in the movie Serenity, he has this great speech, basically, which culminates in this.
I aim to misbehave.
Okay, that was actually not. That was just Aim to Misbehave. I thought I had the speech here somewhere on the thing. But basically, it culminates. He's aiming to misbehave. And I think that's a good thing. I say that a lot at the end of the show. It's kind of my motto. Think especially as a German, we behave too much. I think it behooves us to sometimes misbehave. Anyway, I'm gonna get that shirt done. Probably not this month because I have a hell of a lot to do. Mod7 says print I supported Fab Squirrel on the shirt. Fab Squirrel. Yeah, I don't know why I have that, listening to, I put of course, Private Citizen of Press, the show notes are there also for this episode. I put a video in there as a 2-hour presentation of Steve Gibson actually explaining what squirrel is, and he keeps talking about squirrels and nuts, and it's just, I don't know. My mind goes there. I don't know why, because I'm messed up. Anyway, so there'll be hiatus coming up at some point, and and we'll have a second shirt. I'll let you know, in the last episode before I leave. I'll definitely let you know, that's the last episode and when I'll be back. It's just it's hard to plan. Unsurprisingly, in the moment, especially traveling, shit is hard to plan. Work, traveling, everything, when it comes together, is even worse. So I'll give my best. No, Astral C, not like Austin Powers said, oh, behave. We're here to misbehave. Anyway, let's talk about Steve Gibson's Squirrel. This is gonna make me laugh now every time. And why, what it did, first of all, it's an authentication thing, but why do we need it? That's the first thing I want to talk about. Why do we need Steve Gibson's Squirrel? Of course, if you don't know who Steve Gibson is, there's also a link in the show notes to his Wikipedia page. Show notes are privatecitizen.press. He is the host of the Security Now podcast, which is a podcast I've been listening to for a very long time. I just recently realized, I was talking to somebody, and I realized that I've been doing podcasts for 15 years now, which is bloody scary. Anyway, Security Now was one of the 2 podcasts. The first 2 it's the second podcast I ever listened to. Afterwards, the Power User TV, Super User TV, that thing from Brad Waddell back in the day. And then Security Now. And those 2 basically inspired me to start podcasting. You should interview Steve. Man, I would love to do that at some point. I don't know if he's probably too busy. But it can never hurt to ask. And he seems to be a really cool guy. I mean, as with anybody, like if you've been listening to my shows for years, if you listen to somebody, you kind of, podcasting is it's a more of an intimate relationship with your listener than other media, more than like reading somebody's articles or something. So you kind of start feeling like the person, which is great. This is also a reason why I like feedback from podcast listeners more, because I feel like you're listening to me on the show, you're getting me more. Like you'll get more where I'm coming from. Right? It's more than people who just read stuff and write on my blog or whatever. Podcast listeners are more attuned to your personality, whatever, and they can tell when you make a joke sometimes, and when you're being sarcastic, which I'm quite often. So that's why I like podcasts. But anyway, so that's Steve Gibson. He obviously host of Security Now podcast. He runs grc.com. His main thing he's been doing for decades now is a software called SpinRite. It looks like it's right out of the 18th century. It's like hard drive. Now it does all kinds of media, I think. It's just like, I think you can use it in SSDs too. Anyway, I used it back in the day. I used to do third level IT support in schools, and, obviously hard drives in servers or clients breaking was a huge part of that. And I actually had a SpinRite license for myself. Like all the other people didn't have one. I just bought one myself to make my own work easier. Like at work, I would and they would start calling me in to fix hard drives because I was better at that than anybody else. But it was just SpinRite, which is it's basically a boot disk. Like, I mean, you can do probably everything SpinRite does with like Linux tools as well. It was just like back in the day, this was, I was using Linux at the time, but it wasn't like huge Linux guys in the beginning when I was doing this job, and it was lots of Windows support anyway, so it didn't really matter. But it was just something that was just easy to do, especially if you're on time pressure. And it's intimate with Steve Squirrel, yeah. No king shaming, please. Anyway, so that's Steve Gibson. Now, Steve Gibson has looked at. He is a programmer. He writes like SpinRite looks like the way it's basically like N curses. That's what it looks like. Because he writes everything in assembler. Because the guy's mad. He likes like small code. Which I can respect. I'm not really a programmer, but the guy is mad, but in a good way. And he looked at website authentication, said it's broken. I mean, okay, it doesn't take a genius to see that, but it is broken. So let's quickly, and then he said, okay, I'm going to write a system that makes that better. A lot of people have tried, and I think he has a good solution. I'm not convinced it's going to take over. I'm going to talk about that a little bit at the end. First, I want to explain why we need it, what it is, and then we can discuss that at the end. And this obviously being part of my OTGs segment kind of thing. I have a tag for that. Private Citizen Press show notes have tags at the top. What this is kind of off the grid. It's not really off the grid as in no power or living in a cabin. It's more like off the surveillance capitalism grid, maybe. I want to talk about solutions to problems here. I often talk about problems on the show. This is a thing I created, and I want input from people with tools that they recommend and they think can solve problems that solve problems. And lots of these, some of these won't be very practical. Maybe they'll just be useful for one person who's listening, but that's a win. So this is kind of off the grid as well. It's part of, like, it just solves a security problem, but it also saves it helps with like some privacy stuff and some being off the grid stuff. Anyway, so Steve said website authentication is broken. He's right. Why is it broken? Because right now, we use email and passwords, right? And mostly people use passwords, and they tend to use the same password everywhere. Or they use a password and then append like the website name to it, right? Which is easy to crack, right? So we have the problem where some website gets owned, and there's always one website getting owned at some point. Then your like email address and the corresponding password gets out, or the hashes, and the hashes get brute forced. And then you get compromised. And because you use the same password or a derivation that the bad guys can basically automatically undo, like putting a domain at the end of the email, or like numbers or whatever, then they get access to like all these sites. So it's like a kind of a single point of failure. Some people just rely on email. Like they were legit, like Steve Gibson in this talks about a person he knows. Don't remember who it was. Like, I don't know, was it his aunt or something? I don't know. But I've met these people as well, who are generally like of the older generation, like real boomers or whatever. And they'll be like, I can't remember all these passwords. If I go to a website, I just put in I just bang on the keyboard and it just creates a password, right? And I log in, and then I just stay logged in. And whenever the site locks me out, I don't know the password. I just click remember password and get like something mailed to my email address and log back in. And that is prevalent. That is so prevalent that some websites just log you in with email links. Like that's their primary thing. I've noticed this, where they don't even have passwords anymore. They just log you in via email. Which alleviates the email problem, but creates another problem. And this is a problem a lot of people don't realize. I've written about this extensively as part of my work as an IT security journalist, but it's still, people are surprised about this. And it's still, like, you write about it, but it still doesn't get into people's head, really. Your email account right now, today, is not just an email account. You have a there's lots of nerds listening, and this doesn't apply to some of you. I understand this, but I'm talking about like 99% of the public here, right? And these are all people you know and you do IT support for. So for most people, they have one email account, one primary email account, and that's not the email account anymore. That is their digital life, right? And that password protects their whole digital life, because any other account they have has an email recovery link thing going to that email account. So if a bad guy hacks somebody's email account, he can go in there, look at all the, or she, but I think generally it's guy, probably from Russia. Hey, what do you think? What about Russians? Yeah, shut up.
Goddamn Ruskies.
Anyway, it's always the Russians, right? And so the Russian guy gets into your email. Like, I'm just joking. In case you're listening from Russia, I think you understand that. Anyway, so the Russian guy hacks into your email account, and then he goes, like, he gets that one password, gets in there, and then he can look at all the sites you're registered at, right? He can just search, and you get all these sign-up emails, and he doesn't even need your password there. He just goes to the site, puts in your email address, clicks, send me password link, and he's in. And this is very prevalent. This is so prevalent that this is what attackers do now, right? In companies especially. Like, they go in and maybe they want access to like the software a company makes, or like the build infrastructure, or like their, as people call it these days in the cyber wars scene, the supply chain, right? And they just get some programmer and then, own his email account from inside the company, and then they get like his GitHub access or whatever, they're basically, because the inter-company things have the same thing. They're often tied just to the email account. You can get people go into like CEOs' email accounts to like own, you can get a lot of shit from this, because your digital identity today basically hangs on your email account. And most people's email password is not secure enough to support this, because they don't realize this thing. Because this is something we've shoehorned together, which is crap, really. But it's like, we know passwords are crap, but there's nothing else out there, right? The company's always like biometrics and whatever. And that all has problems, right? Like if your password gets stolen, you make a new password. Right? If your biometrics data, if your fingerprints get copied, you can't make new fingerprints, right? So all of this has problems. So we're basically back to the password, which is a problem. Then, of course, people use password managers, That is a solution. I do that personally. If you're listening to this and you're probably a nerd or whatever IT guy, you're using a password manager. That's a pretty good solution, but it also has problems. And Squirrel is a solution that is very much analogous to that. I would say, from a user's standpoint, from a user experience, it's very much like a really good password manager. Except it's like the crypto is much better because it doesn't use it's cleaner, right? It doesn't use passwords. We'll get into that. But the really bad thing that is interesting, probably if you're listening to this because you're privacy oriented and you don't like to be tracked and you don't like this whole situation we call the surveillance capitalism situation, right? We call surveillance capitalism, that whole thing. If you don't like that, then the solution that if we're not going email links, the other solution is a single sign-on, right? So log in with Facebook, log in with Twitter, log in with another third party. Now that is probably more secure than having shitty passwords and having the same password all over the place, but it has other problems. You trust the provider, whatever company, like you trust Facebook, whatever. They could get broken into. Now, I grant you, it's much less likely that Facebook will get hacked because, if anybody has a good security team, it's like fucking Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, right? These guys know what they're doing. But then on the other hand, you got to weigh this. On the other hand, they're huge target. They're billions of users. Everybody wants to hack them. So, got to weigh that against each other. But, they're probably more secure than having a password somewhere and then some random site that has shitty IT infrastructure gets owned, like some web shop somewhere or in some blog or whatever. And then your password gets out and then they get into your important accounts, right? But the problem with stuff like Facebook is you got to trust the company, not only to do security well, which I kind of still, I trust them on that, but you have to trust them ethically as well. And there is I think what is the real danger, what people don't really talk about, which is something that's kind of new in this whole cancel culture and cutting people off atmosphere that we've gotten ourselves into, like what I like to call the culture wars in the last 2-3 years. We have another problem. What happens if you log in everywhere with Twitter, right? But your Twitter account you get blocked, you get banned. What happens if you're Donald Trump and you log in everywhere with Twitter and then they kill your Twitter account? What do you do? That is not good. So you might say something that you might not agree with the WHO on Twitter, and then they kill your account, and then the way you used to log in to other sites is gone. That's not a good thing. And then same thing could happen with Google. Google is banning people all over the place. You might have a YouTube account. You might say something in YouTube comments that they don't like, and they're like, your your Google account's now they're not gonna ban you off YouTube. They're gonna kill your Google account, right? Which means your Gmail is now gone or whatever, presumably. I don't know. It's never happened to me because I don't really use that stuff. I mean, I use it for some things, but not for mission critical stuff, so I don't know. So I don't know. Or Facebook, we had, speaking about the show, we had an episode 78, about Facebook trying to decide if you're an extremist or if your friends are extremists. A company like that tracks you everywhere and then arbitrarily tries to decide if you or your friends are extremists. Do you want to depend on a company like that to hold on to your digital life? I would say no, right? And this is all not stuff that Steve talks about in his presentation. This is all just me, things that I worry about. But, I come to the same conclusion as him, which is we basically need an alternative. And Steve's answer was whipping his squirrel out. Might as well run with this now once we're making fun of this. So Squirrel, SQRL, secure. It sounds like a SQL library, although it's SQRL, so it's not really, but my brain always goes to like SQL. I don't know. PTSD from previous jobs, maybe. Squirrel stands for secure, quick, reliable login. It has a very cute logo. It is like literally a squirrel, and its tail forms a lock. It's a very good logo. I mean, if you look at Steve Gibson's website, and like I think I'm fair to say I like the man, but like graphics and like layout was never like his forte. So it's a surprisingly good logo for that. It was like secure QR login before, but he decided to like distance himself a bit from QR codes, which I think is a good move. Actually, I have an episode on the docket about QR codes. Something I've been thinking about a lot. How we are basically QR codes are a mixed bag. QR codes are going to be a problem, I feel. Because we are basically forcing people to scan in QR codes everywhere now. If you go to a restaurant, right, because of the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic restrictions, they did all the logins, like, tracking, sign up here, use this form with QR codes, right? And now the restaurants are going, why have a paper menu? Just put it like on a website and have people go there with the QR code. I mean, I have UX issues with the menu like this. But, this is basically teaching people to just like click on links they can't read, which I don't think is a good idea. Yeah, Mode 7 says, "Hey, glassholes, scan this." That's a blast from the past. Google Glass. Wow, man, that's the thing that some people I worked with back, I actually didn't work with them back in the day, but worked with them later. They thought it would completely take off, and of course didn't. That was a no-starter. But yeah, so QR codes are involved in the system, but they're not necessarily needed, which I think is a good idea. So what is Squirrel? So Squirrel is basically a client that you can run on your desktop computer, on your phone, whatever. And it has kind of like a password manager. It has a master password. So when you start it, you create an ID. And you unlock that ID with a master password. And basically what it does is when you want to authenticate to a site, i.e. log in, right? The client creates a curved 25519 public-private key pair, right? Which is based on this master ID you've created that is yours, that is like, that gets that one secret that gets unlocked with your password. And it basically it creates this key pair by using the site's URL you're going to. So let's say fab.industries, and the nonce, which is like a cryptographic thing. It's basically a pseudo-random string that gets generated with an interaction. Now, because Steve is being cute, he calls that nonce a nut. Because the squirrel is collecting the nuts, which is cute. So basically it generates a public-private key pair. Now the key here is that, traditionally public-private cryptography has been around for ages. That's how we do pretty much any kind of sharing secrets on the internet with software. Traditionally used to be prime numbers. This use prime factorization and take huge prime numbers and you can multiply them, but it's really hard to unmultiply them. Now, in that scenario, you're using random primes, right? So it's really, really easy to figure out if something's a prime number. So you use like pseudo-random, but you use random primes. Now, it turns out with curve 25519, which is the whole thing that enables this whole idea from Steve, is you can actually use you don't have to use a random thing to generate a key. You can actually you can use data. You can pick data. It should be random, pseudo-random. So it takes like the site's URL, whatever your input like from your master ID is, and the nut, right? And it hashes them. It actually creates an HMAC. So it's pseudo-random at the other end. So it's a perfect like seed to create, I don't know if that's the correct cryptographic term, but to create this private public key pair. And what you're basically doing is, the public key, of course, public, you can publish that. You give that to the server. And this whole thing is done to enable something which in cryptographic terms called a zero knowledge proof. I have links to all of these things in the show notes, privatecitizen.press. If you want to read further into it, it's very mind-blowing crypto stuff. But basically, what you're doing here is to log in is the following. Your client creates this key pair that is based on the URL of the website. The server gets the public key. You keep the private key that's generated for that site. And then the server generates some message, sends that to you, and asks your client to sign that with its private key, which the server doesn't have. Client does that, sends that back, and with the public key, the server can then verify that you signed that with the corresponding private key. It's called a zero knowledge proof because you can, basically, I as the client can prove that I have the private key without showing the server the private key, right? Basically, I am algorithmically, the server asks me a question. It gives me a query. I do something, and I give an answer back, and the server can then say that's the correct answer. So what we're doing here is we're establishing this key pair, and then the server knows, right, this guy is this guy, right? So let's say Fab Industries, the website, you come along, you create an account with Squirrel. I've implemented this system. Then you go, hey, my name is Steve. I want the account Steve. You sign up, and then it runs to that first time, and then my server knows that whatever identity you created, the Squirrel identity, belongs to Steve. And from then on, you can sign in. The beauty about this is that unlike a password system, the server does not store anything secret. We know that with a good password system these days, the password's never stored in clear text. There's like a hash or whatever, a salted hash, stuff like that. But with a password system, the server needs to store something secret, and it can get broken into, and that can get compromised. With Squirrel, that it just doesn't store anything, right? It doesn't even need to store that public key because it can get that public key every time, right? It does store that. It goes, okay, account Steve, this is the public key, but it needs to store that, but it's not secret, right? It could literally publish that. Doesn't matter. It's a public key. Who cares? It's public. It's just there so that Steve can come along and use his private key, which needs to be private, that is in your client, and that's why you need your password to prove that it's him. And the whole system is much more involved. Like the first time the server and the client exchange stuff, there's only like the URL, and the nonce, whatever, is like hashed. And then it has like a ratcheting kind of thing, kind of like a modern messenger encryption service where like it actually every time. So let's say you come along, you authenticate with Fab.Industries. Your client gives the server the public key. Then the client, then the server actually sends back, okay, so you are that client, whatever, right? And what it actually does every time is it sends the last message. So the client speaks to the server, and then the server sends back that original message as a signed blob in this thing. So it always like ratchets it up, right? It always basically generates a new key pair based on the last one. So the crypto keys keep changing all the time, but it's, but client and server obviously can keep track of that. And because they're always encrypting the last message the other sent, it provides like integrity, right? So they know the encryption is there, and they know there's no packets being lost because the next thing I need to get is like my last message encrypted again. It's Mod7 says, I feel I need a drink. I need a drink for this. I should have prefaced this. This is like crypto. I'm trying to keep this very simple, right? So I'm not going, like, if you really want to know how that works, watch that 2-hour presentation. I'm trying to make this a little bit easier. But basically, you can ignore all of that. It's really smart crypto. Basically, the important thing is that the server doesn't store anything secret. That's kind of the mind-blowing thing. You should have a warning on some episodes, will need a drink. Yeah, alcoholic beverage, strongly recommended. Maybe we should do that in the future. Yeah, so it basically the whole system just provides an encryption channel where the integrity and the security of the communication is guaranteed. Now the cool thing about this is it's also cool for a user, because what you can do is say I'm on a desktop computer, right? And I go to the GRC forums, which use Squirrel, right? And let's say I do not have a Squirrel client on this desktop computer, but I want to log into his forum on the desktop. But let's say I have a Squirrel client on my iPhone. I can actually go to on the desktop, I go to the GRC forums, right? It shows me a QR code. So, and I'm logged into my Squirrel client on my iPhone, right? So I'm like there, I can unlock with my fingerprint probably, right? So I'm in there. I scan the QR code of my screen, and my client does this whole authentication. But like in the QR code is basically, you can also do it without the QR code. The QR code is just, whatever, grc.com, forums.grc.com, whatever it is. And then the nonce, right? It's just that information in the QR code. So the client on my phone authenticates this, and I get logged on the desktop, because the nonce tells the site, hey, we're talking about this session. It's like this server session, which is really cool. If you're on a computer that you don't trust, could be keyloggers or whatever, and you trust your phone, you can log in with your phone. You can actually do that, like if you're in a hotel and you're trying to log in, like on the Netflix account, if Netflix supports Squirrel, for example, on the TV, because you don't want to touch that, because that's a hotel system. You could log in with your phone. The TV would just give you a QR code. Okay, if you're really paranoid, you can probably also bypass the QR code. Type it all in. Apple will scan your scroll. Watch out. Yeah, but the thing is, the beauty about this whole thing is, it's not as easy. They can't just like leech your there's no passwords in the Squirrel client, right? Yes, they could slurp this data and then basically slurp your ID and set up a second ID. Of course, they can do that, right? Can you log in from? So Astral C asks, can you log in from multiple locations to the same account? It sounds like it's locked to a single device authenticator. We'll actually get to that. So basically, just a Squirrel joke, no serious in that at all. Oh, Apple will scan your Squirrel, as in like, okay, sorry, I didn't get that. Of course, no, it's a good point. You need to always trust the device, right? So, yeah. Actually, there's some stuff we're gonna talk about in a bit that Squirrel helps you when you get compromised like that. But anyway, so so what Steve's idea was, which I think is really cool, is basically Squirrel shifts a lot of the responsibility for like you securing your login to website from the user, because right now it's with the user. The user has to generate passwords, remember them, have a system for remembering them, whatever. And it shifts this to the implementation of the client, like the operating system, basically, because this could be built into the operating system as well. Basically, it makes your computer that you have in your pocket or on your desk do a lot of crypto heavy lifting. I'm calling it heavy lifting because it isn't really heavy lifting. You could, Steve has specifically designed this thing so it runs on like very, very, like on embedded systems, stuff like that. but it lets the computer do the heavy lifting instead of you having to remember all the passwords, which is basically what computers are made for, right? They're made for making shit easier, especially math and crypto shit. But what happens if you get compromised? So the idea is you have a lifelong Squirrel ID. You create that once. The way it works, you create it, you put a password in, it creates a piece of paper that's your backup. It has a QR code on it. It has a backup code, like you may be seen. Like if you have two-factor authentication, often they make you print out something like this because it's a really good backup. It's on a piece of paper. It can't get hacked. You put that somewhere where nobody else can get to. Pretty cool. And that is like your ID, right? But what happens if your computer gets compromised? If you have a Trojan on your computer, if you go through customs and they take your phone and you don't see your phone for like 2 hours and you're like, I don't trust the phone anymore. So there is a way of rekeying basically. So what it does, there are several layers. I'm not going to explain it. Look in the show notes, private citizen press, more info in there, links in there. But it has different layers. Like you have that base layer with your recovery code, and then you have several layers until you get to the point where like the crypto that signs the URL public-private keys. And one way of that is with your backup, with your paper thing, you can actually go and invalidate your current Squirrel ID. I think you can do that up to like 3 times. So if you get hacked, you go like, okay, that Squirrel ID I had on my iPhone, Apple did something fishy. I don't trust Apple anymore. I need a new Squirrel ID. So you go from the backup and you basically create a new Squirrel ID, but it's tied to your old one. And the way that works is, if you then go to a website, they still know it's you, but in the act of you using your new ID, your rekeyed ID, it invalidates all the old keys. So that solves the problem that, like, if your key gets compromised, how do you let all the servers you interact with know? And the way is just you log in. You log in again with your rekeyed thing, rekeyed ID, and in that act, it actually invalidates the old ID, and you actually actively kind of reclaim your identity from whoever hacked it. Super user asks, at the point of input, will it simply pass a text string? I'm concerned at some stage this will require JavaScript on the client side. I'm have to try to understand this. Actually, I mean, it's a protocol, right? It doesn't require anything on it. Can be implemented on anything. Like, it could be implemented in JavaScript in the browser. It could be implemented. Right now, like, generally you'd use it on a desktop. It's a client, right? It's a Windows client or a Linux client. And it's just like completely separate from the browser, right? It's just like the browser passes it. Basically, to the phone, you would pass a QR code. Like, you'd scan a QR code and it gets the URL and the nonce. And on the desktop, the browser does that, right? You click on a website and it uses like a SQRL ://URL scheme, right? And that passes the URL to your client. And then from there on, it doesn't use the browser anymore. The client directly communicates with the server and goes, lock that guy in. Super user says, just trying to get a picture of how it interacts with the browser. So yeah, that's how it works. Actually, it has some man in the middle protection. I think how it works is on the, I don't know if it works like on all systems, but Steve was showing this on Windows, and I would think it's the same way on Linux. It creates a web browser on an internal port. I think it's, I think it's a 25519, because of curve 25519. And what the browser actually does, it passes that Squirrel URL to that internal web browser of the Squirrel client, and that then gets authenticated. It gets around some like stuff where if you're behind the NAT and everybody has the same IP, that you can't spoof that and shit like that. More Squirrel jokes, man in the middle. Okay, stop now. Mode 7 says, I avoid JavaScript mostly for the bloat it tends to add. Not every site, but most misuse it. Non-script sites, when able, unfortunately, web devs re-implement HTML for no reason. Yeah, dude, I fight with this with web developers all the time. I do not like JavaScript either for the same reason. But this is something that doesn't need JavaScript at all. Like, okay, this all depends on your website, right? So on the guy implementing it on the server. But there are a myriad ways to implement this. It's generally an API, right? You'd have like a Squirrel server client. I think it's technically also a client. Like you have Squirrel server software running on the server, and that can be anything. It can be C. I think Steve's obviously written in assembler. It doesn't matter. And then you have an API and you tie that into your website, right? But it can also be, there's WordPress plugins that do it. So it can be completely implemented in, I don't know, WordPress, presumably PHP. You could build that yourself, or you could build it, whatever. Or you can just install on a Linux distro, you can just install a package and tie that in with whatever, like Lamp stack or whatever you're using. It doesn't really need anything, right? It's just, you need a client somewhere. The user needs a client by definition. That's how it works. And then on the server side, whatever the server, the administrator chooses to use. But I think generally what you say, I think it doesn't communicate through the browser at all. The browser just passes. You need some way to pass this URL, that includes the nonce, to the client. And it on Windows or Linux, it would do that through the browser because you're clicking on something on the browser with that URL scheme. And otherwise you do it with like the QR code. That's pretty much how it works. So you can, as I said, you can control your, you can rekey, you can take control of your identity back. Also, you can also transfer, obviously. Let's say I have a Windows client, I create my Squirrel, master ID. How do I get that somewhere else, right? There's also QR codes. Like you can encapsulate the whole ID into like, I think it's kind of like an ASCII armored PGP key. So it's like a block of code, like of numbers, letters and numbers that you can type in manually, or that could be encapsulated in a QR code, and you can just scan the QR code from your phone, for example, to transport your Squirrel ID. And that's everything like you need, right? That's like you can use that as a backup as well. You obviously need your backup code for these other operations, but you can use that. You just need your password. You need that and your password. So you need one password. Now the cool thing, one thing I haven't mentioned is the way Steve has implemented that in his client, and that's generally, I think, the idea is, so you have a password, which should obviously be strong and hard to guess and very long and hard to enter and whatever. But Steve's client works in a way, so there's a difference between this is me, and as he calls it, and hey, this is me again, which is like you log in for you boot up your machine, you log in your Squirrel client, you have to enter the full password. And then you can just enter like a short version, it's like a PIN. Or it's like the last few characters of the password or whatever. And like you have to enter that only when you you log in the first time, it unlocks your secret, your stuff, puts that into RAM, but that's only ever kept in RAM. And as long as that is in RAM, you can use like this short password to get in. But then when something happens, your screen locks, you log out of your Windows or you reboot or whatever, you have to enter the full password again. And I think he made it so that if you use the short phrase and you put that in once, it automatically goes back to the long one, which is, a sensible security thing. It weakens security, but on the other hand, also this is a system you're locked in at, right? So, at that point, somebody who's in front of that could presumably put a keylogger on that system that very moment and then get your long phrase the next time. Super user says thinking about OAuth and OpenID at the time the providers like Google and Facebook like that they were basically farming data and locking shops that had those as a login option to use their service. Yeah, I think for Google and Facebook it was also more just like tracking, because it's like, having tracking cookies. There are incentives for Apple, Google, and Facebook to adopt. Are there incentives for Apple, Google, and Facebook to adopt Squirrel? Wouldn't they lose their login monopoly? Totally. I mean, we're going to talk about that at the end, how likely I think this is going to be adopted. I'm putting that at the end because that's going to put a damper on the whole thing. Obviously, currently I'm just trying to, build you this is cool, isn't this cool nerd shit picture. So that's how it works. It seems pretty cool. It's been around for a few years now. There are many implementations. I mean, it's a draft protocol technically right now, but it seems to be very stable, mature. It uses Lipsodium, which is a curve. I have to look that up every time. I just can't remember that fucking number. I've written it so many times, still have to look it up every time. Curve 2551 of the Daniel J. Bernstein's thing, and Lipsodium is also it's good crypto. It's been vetted, so it seems like Steve has implemented this very well. It's been vetted. Also, his implementation of Lipsodium has been vetted by people. It's pretty cool. Super user, yes, of course. Super user says in Twitch chat, appreciate the detailed answer. I mean, that's what we're doing here, right? I like this. I mean, if you weren't on Twitch chat right now, you have to write this in for the next show, and it would take ages. So sometimes it's really cool to have people listening on Twitch. And I answer these. I don't answer everything, obviously, that I see in chat, but I answer stuff where I think somebody listening to this on a podcast right now might have the same question. And then it gets answered right away. And we're all one step ahead. So that's pretty cool. Seems to be good crypto. One reason why I'm only talking about this now is just I'm only getting around to it. But I also think, I know that it's been around for years. And Steve's talked about it on Security Now for years. But on the other hand, with crypto, the older stuff is, and the more people actually vet it, the more, you can rely on it. Now, the cool thing here, another cool thing, if you want to be off the grid and you want to be a little bit anonymous on the internet, the cool thing here is because the only thing that Squirrel does is computationally answering a challenge. It's not tied to, it's not such a one-to-one binding as email and password, because Steve has built this in a way that enables the following thing. Now, where I said it hashes the URL and the nonce, that's actually a lie. It hashes the URL and then appends none or null or something to it, and then the nonce, whatever. This is done because you can actually append something to that. There's a pro mode on the client where you can go, okay, you're about to log into fab.industries, right? And, your Squirrel ID will be Steve, and that's your account, whatever. You can actually go and say, okay, today I want to log in as somebody else. And what you do is you just take a string, and that's how you call your ID. Let's call it Anonymous Steve, right? And so it takes fab.industries, and instead of appending none or null or whatever, it appends... it's a very big difference to programmer, none and null, but okay, I'm not a programmer, as you can probably tell. It goes fab.industries, Anonymous Steve, and then the nonce. Now, what this does is to your client can always recreate that, because you just need to know, okay, I put in Anonymous Steve, and that's kind of my second ID. But to the server, because of the way Macs work, Macs as well, hashes work, because you're doing an HMAC, right? The way hashes work is, a hash works like this. You put something into a hash and you get something completely different out, right? That looks like pseudo, looks like random noise. Now, if you put something, if I put a very long sentence into, let's say I put the first chapter of James Joyce Ulysses. I don't actually know how would this works if you put in a lot of stuff, right? But like, let's say I put a page from a book in and hash that. And I take the same page and I change one character. The resulting hash is completely different. It is, if the hashing function is implemented correctly, if it's a cryptographically strong hashing function, the guy on the other end will not know that these two things I put in are extremely related. There's just one character change. You can't tell. So what happens if I put this string at the end of the URL is the server at the other end thinks this is a completely different Squirrel ID. It doesn't know it's anonymous Steve instead of Steve. It knows, like, doesn't matter. So you can actually use your Squirrel ID that you use to log into all the sites. If you want to log in anonymous somewhere or like have a throwaway account, you do this, and your login is still protected behind that one password that behind your one Squirrel client, your one ID. But to the server, you're anonymous. There's no way the server can tie these two accounts together from the Squirrel login, right? If you use the same IP, yeah, I'm not saying this is perfect, but you could use a VPN or whatever, right? You could do that. It's basically the equivalent of just going to Gmail, creating a throwaway email address with Gmail for free, and then using that to sign up to the same site, and they don't know it's you. So that's pretty cool. There's some other stuff that Squirrel can do. Steve has implemented a way to have shared accounts. So basically, I have a Squirrel ID. Let's say my wife has one as well. And let's say, Netflix would allow shared accounts in this way, and they had implemented Squirrel. Then I could invite her Squirrel ID, so she can get access to the account tied to my ID. It's like shared managed access. It's not in there by default. The client supports it, but like the server has to support it. So there's some heavy lifting the server has to do. But if the server wants to do that, they can do this. So you can you don't have to have a throwaway account for like two of us that we both know the password to. I can actually have an account that I've opened, and then I can invite her account, and then she can log in with her Squirrel ID and can use it. And there's another way how this can be federated. So let's say I have a company and I have multiple domains and multiple services, and I want somebody to be able to log into all these services with one Squirrel ID. I can do that. Steve's example was if the US ever had like a Squirrel ID, like if they, if you'd have identity.gov, right, and you could log in with your Squirrel ID, and you can then log into the IRS website, or you could log into your whatever health insurance or the DMV or whatever. Then they could implement that in a way where you go to irs.gov, but you log in with your identity.gov Squirrel ID, right? Because you logged in with identity.gov first. And then if you go to irs.gov, they know, okay, we'll just forward, because, they're all tied together. They can just forward that query to a server for identity.gov, and that does the challenge, and then just internally tells irs.gov, yeah, that's Steve. That's the guy who wanted to log in, which is pretty cool, I think. Super User also says, amusingly, Steve's site still endorses Usenet news groups where he hosts discussion of the project. So as I can tell, there's no Squirrel bridge to news groups. I don't know. Steve loves news groups, which I respect. Probably somebody has, I don't know. That's probably because of how news group interactions work. I mean, I know that he has forums on his site that you can log in with Squirrel, and I think those are tied into the news group. But I don't know. Yeah, he's old-fashioned in some ways. But okay, to sum this up, it's very easy. What's the cool stuff? What are the key features? First of all, of Squirrel. First of all, no secrets stored on the server. So there's nothing to leak, right? Which means that no security fuck up on one site somewhere can influence other accounts on other sites. There's no third party involved. This is between my client and a server specifically. That means no one site can shut off access for other sites. You only have to remember one password. That's got to be strong, but it's got to be one, so that is doable. So as we can tell, it's strong crypto throughout. It uses established libraries. It's how you should do something like this. The security is this is a protocol, so the security is on a protocol level, right? So you do not have to, somebody has a site, they just get something, a plugin for the web server, or whatever, for WordPress. They get some code that somebody else who knows what they're doing has written, can just implement that and have an API and shit like that. So you do not have to rely on like thousands of websites getting it right, which they don't, which is why passwords get leaked all the time. And something I find really cool, there's nothing tying your personal information, name, email, etc., to your login. Right? For the server, like per design. Right? If the server wants a name, of course, when you sign up, they can go, what's your name? What's your email address? What's your bank account? What's your credit card number? What's your credit card security? They can ask you everything they want, but that's for the website to decide. Squirrel itself, the authentication works without anything. It's a public-private key exchange. What that is tied to is completely up to the server. That means you can, if you're a good guy running a server, you can actually implement this system in a way where it doesn't need any of this information. Right? If I want to have blog comments, and I have WordPress, I install the plugin, I say, okay, let's do Squirrel authentication. I can just presumably just ask you for a name, which you can put in anything, and then you can comment, and I don't need any information from you, which is pretty cool. And it's strong authentication at the same time. If they can, Superuser says, if they can forward the request, do you foresee a future where Google Analytics requests a pingback, where they put up a simple guide, like just put these 4 lines in your Apache server? I guess even if they forwarded it, it wouldn't help Google anyway. They're not running code, right? So the cool thing about this is, like, I mean, you can implement anything you want, but like this doesn't rely on a third party. So there is no tracking. Per definition, the protocol is between a client and a server. It's actually, that's what I like. Took some time to get my head around how this whole thing works. Like, I had to watch this video like 2-3 times, like Steve's video that I also put in the show notes at privatecitizen.press. But it's kind of like the internet is supposed to work. It's client server, right? It's not a conglomerate of servers going somewhere, IDing you and following you around on the internet. A third party can't really look into this communication because this is like really, really, really secure. So it's pretty cool. I put a link to the Squirrel documentation in the show notes as well. privatecitizen.press, if you want to read up on that. Let's talk about the big elephant in the room. This is never going to get mainstream adoption. It has the same problem. I'm going to do a show about this at one point. It's just not very... it's more of a political episode, really, but I'm going to do this at some point. I'm going to have a discussion about why I think, the Fediverse and why something like this never, like federated microblogging and stuff like that, never takes off. And this is the same way. I mean, I wouldn't say never. There are instances where something like this, where like a big company, whatever, who has market dominance. That's usually how things get adopted in IT, right? There's a company that just gets overwhelming market dominance, even just for maybe a few years, and then some system gets implemented, and that's how it stays, right? And there are very, very few examples where that isn't the case. I mean, Linux is definitely one. Linux is an example, but the problem is you talk to open source people and they're like, yeah, but Linux did this. Yeah, but Linux is the only thing that did. Linux is the only thing that ever did this, where it's like, it's just a solution somebody came up with, and it is like technically good, or you can call it technically superior or great or whatever, but it basically took off because it was good. This usually never happens. If you look at like stuff, the history of computers and IT is littered with the better solution to a problem that didn't take off, right? It's technology in general. It's like, what's it HD DVD Blu-ray? You remember? Oh no, HD DVD, MC Frontalot, stuff. Betamax VHS. Like, operating systems. I don't know what side of the fence you're on, but like OS2 Windows, whatever, right? That's so often the case. Linux transcended that, but it's an exception. I feel it's an exception to the rule. Superuser says counterpoint email is a fully open social network and every account relies on it. Well, no, email is an example for a protocol that transcends. Email is not a social network. Not at all, right? The idea of a social network is, Facebook wasn't like this in the beginning, but it turned into this. This is why Twitter took off, because it is to varying degrees public. The idea of a social network is basically you're in a pub, right? You're talking to people in a pub. Email is a messaging service. Email is, to me, more comparable to WhatsApp. But also there, it is a rare example. And I mean, another rare example hardware-wise is the PC. The PC is I called it in a column, I think, for Heise Online once. It's in German we say Kulturgut. It's like a how would you say that? It's like a protected building. It's like a cultural thing that we need to protect, because the PC is an open platform, right? The IBM compatible PC is at its core defined of being a platform where anybody can, I can buy a graphics card from NVIDIA, and I can buy a motherboard from MSI, and I can buy a CPU from Intel and RAM from Samsung, and then I stick it all together and it works. And that never happens. Like, phones are not like that. The Mac is not like that. Anything else, anything. Like, there's not like I don't know, we don't have one anymore, but like your kitchen machine, right? If you have a KitchenAid, right? You can't take like a Philips head for like a kitchen machine like we had, or Bosch or whatever, and put it on there. It like systems like that really never happened. And I think like there's probably a holy trinity where you're running like Linux on a PC, where it's just, that's only two. We need like the third part of that, and then you're writing email or whatever. You're like in heaven, because you're like in the heaven of open standards. But usually this is not how it works, because usually companies get market adoption by forcing stickiness, right? Having lock-in or whatever, like forcing people to stay somewhere, and that's how messengers take off, because it's like really hard once everybody's on WhatsApp. There might be much better messenger out there, but like it's really hard to get people over there. And that's the problem with Squirrel, because this relies on everybody and their aunt who's running a server to implement it. And as I don't know who was in chat earlier, very succinctly identified, there's a reason Google and Facebook and Twitter do single sign-on. They don't do that as their PR propaganda relations proclaim. Oh, we want a better. No. They want something. They want that widget on their website, so they can. There's another point where they can track everybody who logs in, whatever. And Superuser recommends a PC Mac. PC Mac had a 40-year anniversary feature recently for the PC with several articles, which I recommend. It's a historical accident because it was cheaper and easier for IBM to go with no Mac architecture at the time. Stuck for historical reasons. Rather than for business or technological reasons. I mean, the PC, there's lots of solutions where you could have made the PC much smaller and whatever if it wasn't modular. But it's just, just imagine what that, one of these days I'm probably going to do an episode on the PC just for that, just like Kulturschatz PC or whatever. Because, gaming, all of gaming came out of PC gaming. All of that happened. If you look at when I grew up, I got my first PC. I've been a PC man all my life. My first computer in '89 was the 286 PC. I've been PC ever since. I never had an Atari, never owned a Mac. I only own PCs. And so I'm a PC fan. But if you look at when I was growing up, between 94 and 98, the strides that PC gaming made just blows your mind. You're going from 2D sprites basically to 3D fucking Doom or whatever. You're not even Doom. You're going to full. I remember Schleichfahrt is one of my favorite PC games. I have the box as I'm recording this. It's in pride of place up on the on my cupboard here. Schleichfahrt. It sounds weird if it means silent running in German. The English title was Archimedean Dynasty. I don't think the translation is very good. But it was a submarine game, and it blew my mind. It was a DOS game at the time when most games had moved to Windows. It was still a DOS game. It came out in 98, I think. But it's just the graphics were amazing for the times. When did that come out? I can't. If I lie on this, I will never live it down. Released in 96, actually. So 96, November 96. It's amazing. It was amazing. The first time I saw that, that's one of the things the PC enabled, right? That modularity allowed people to innovate on, let's say, graphics card and stuff. So it's, there are counterexamples, but I feel generally it's a very steep hill to climb, and you can't force it. Sometimes it happens, and maybe it'll happen with Squirrel, and I don't really. I didn't do this show to say everybody needs to use it or I think it's the future. I think it's a very cool solution. One of the reasons I like to do these shows once in a while where I just nerd out, right? Where I nerd out and then go, this is great. Everybody should be using this. And I don't, maybe I'm jaded because I've been doing this. 1st of March next year, will be a professional journalist for 10 years. And obviously for a longer time, 15 years of podcasts, I've been doing this nerd shit for a while. And even before that, I've been watching this shit since, basically 1989, since I got my first computer. And, I see a prejudice against stuff like this, against federated things, against independent things, because companies like to have things under their control. Everybody does. Governments do. Companies do. And I think it's a really cool solution. But I also think we should go and say, okay, it's never going to be adopted by everybody. So let's give up on it, right? Why not use it? Right? Why not use it? If just some people use it for their blog, why not? Why not? It's okay, you'll have to install another client. But the way Steve made this is really cool. You can basically just implement it alongside passwords. And, then maybe the site will never migrate to a point where everybody logging in uses Squirrel, right? So there are always passwords to get leaked and, they can always get hacked. But you as the Squirrel user can actually flip a bit. It's like a checkbox in the client, and you go from now on only use Squirrel. And in the protocol, that actually it literally flips a bit. I think in a header somewhere. It's so Steve Gibson. Uh, and it just tells the server, from now on, just forget my password. Like from now on, for this account, I'm using Squirrel. I don't want anybody to be able to log in with a password, and I don't want any recovery email links mailed to anybody. And if the server actually adheres to the protocol, it does that. It can delete your password. So that's pretty cool. That actually means as a user, you can be more secure, right? And yeah, it will not be the one solution to replace everything else, but you already have passwords. You have a password manager. Just maybe we could just get it adopted in some nerd corner in the internet. That would be cool. And by the way, that is how Linux started, right? That is how Linux actually, once they conquered the world, because it's still non-existent on the desktop, basically. But, that is where Linux got where it got. Linus didn't go, Linus Torvalds. Hello, my name is Linus Torvalds. Didn't go and say, I want to conquer the world. That's a joke he makes. But, like, if you read his originally, mailing list, speaking of mailing list post, it's like, this is just a hobby. It's never going to conquer that. And I think he really felt that way. And we just started using it. The nerds just started using it because it was cool. And, a few decades later, it runs the whole internet, right? So it might, you never know. Let's just adopt it as nerds and see what happens. I feel like I'm uncharacteristically optimistic today. Well, I'm actually not. I think we just try it, just appreciate it as a cool solution. And if nothing else, it's a thing you can tell people when they tell you, well, this is all fucked and authentication is fucked and there's no way to do authentication on the internet. You can say, well, look at Squirrel. That's a cool solution. If more people used it, it would actually make our lives better. Yeah, that's it. That's it for Steve Gibson's nuts. Steve Gibson's Squirrel. We're having feedback throughout the whole exchange here, which I think is great. This is why I love doing this on Twitch and having people actually chime in. I think it actually helps everybody. I think it clears up questions before people have to write in. But speaking of writing in, there are some people who wrote in. So let's get to the producer feedback for this episode. Actually, if you have some feedback, go to privatecitizen.press. There's a contact link in the top. Many ways of contacting me, including completely anonymous ones, of course. We had Nuri Noas chime in via the Matrix installation, or the federated Matrix messaging service. I need echo on my voice now. He was responding to episode 82. That was my Afghanistan episode. I'm just going to say it's him. If not, please let me know. Anyway, Nurinor said, I was catching up during holidays. What I liked about this episode was the anti-military tone, which finished with the info that military vests are very good for carrying steel plates. Exactly the humor needed to bear the situation. Lighthearted comment. I still want to respond to that seriously, because I was talking about I have a plate carrier, military. I don't know. It's 511 tactical, but it's it's a tac. I think it's mostly used by law enforcement. Really, I got it in multicam, so I guess I don't know. Some special force probably use that. It's definitely not your standard issue US military wear, but I get your point. It's like tactical hardware. And that's really great if you want to do training, running with weights. It's very comfortable, obviously. Now, Nuri Norris says the anti-military tone of the episode. Now, I want to make something clear here. In that episode, yes, I was very critical of the U.S. Intervention in Afghanistan over the last 20 years. But what I was mostly critical with was the politicians, right? The presidents that got us, as well as the German government as well, German politicians. that got the military into the war. But like, I'm not like anti-military per se, right? I'm not anti, the privates and the lieutenants and the corporals and the colonels, right? That if you're in the military, for better or for worse, that's your job, right? If they say go to Afghanistan, you go to Afghanistan. Like, I'm not mad at those people. As I said in that episode, I know people who in the German army, in the Bundeswehr, who went to Afghanistan. And why that wouldn't have been my personal choice, but then also I wouldn't have signed up with the army, right? Right. I'm not mad at them. Like, I was criticizing the politicians, and maybe like the general stuff, like that level, like the generals, right? That's their mistake. Like, they're the ones deciding, or they're the ones, saying we're going to go there. Of course, I'm critical of the, for better or for worse, using the term military-industrial complex, right? We're talking about the whole thing that, that follows from that, like, how much of the U.S. economy is based on the military, how much of the German economy is based on, manufacturing weapons and stuff. But that comes from that. But, am I not going to buy a plate carrier because of that? No. Like, I'm somebody who has never believed in, like, let's boycott a company and then they notice, right? I don't think that generally works. It certainly doesn't work if I don't buy, like, let's say they were using these plate carriers for soldiers in Afghanistan, right? They're not going to notice if I don't buy one, right? In Germany. That's not like how they make their money, right? And I don't think that's how you influence these decisions. I think you influence, we're in a democracy. I think you influence them as voters. If you tell the people you want to be president, if you vote people that say, well, we're going to pull the troops out, if you support the people pull the troops out, that's, why I was supporting Trump when he said we'll pull the troops out, not, completely different from what else he did, or if he's a good guy or not. I don't think anybody who's in that level, who's a president or a chancellor or a prime minister, is ever a good guy completely. But, I can say a certain decision is a good decision. I support that, and I support that decision. I do not support the decision of going to that war in the first place, no matter if it was the German army or the US one. Yeah, and I just wanted to point that out. So it wasn't an anti-military tone. It's more of an anti-politician tone, really. And also, like, military gear is really good gear, right? I was talking to somebody over the weekend. I was actually, I'm hanging out with a hunter, and then I was. She showed me her rifles and her shotgun. And there's this thing that struck me. That's not a euphemism. The thing that struck me about, like, one thing about weapons is it's about guns. And this struck me the first time when I went to a shooting range, is there is a thing in, like, quality control with guns that we've lost. That, like, if you're in, like, a Western society, we don't manufacture things like that anymore anywhere. Right? If you look at like a Glock, right, and you look at the like, don't divorce yourself from what that is, and then you can shoot people with it. Just go, like, look at it as the object, right? It is so well manufactured, like, compared to, let's say, a car, right? Like even the most expensive, like, race car you can get is, like, completely loosey goosey with the components and how they're through together compared to, let's say, a Glock, because if you have something like that, where, like, you have the finest problem with the tolerance, right, it can blow up in your hand and blow your hand off. Whereas with a car, okay, yeah, that screw is going to be, like, it's going to cause something. It's not going to, like, crash the car, right? So maybe, if you build a spacecraft, right, NASA probably, or SpaceX, they probably have the same kind of, like, manufacturing and quality control. And I don't think even aircrafts, like, if you ever flew in a 747, right, shit's, like, vibrating all over the place, right? If you have a good hunting rifle, there's nothing, like, if you go and, like, repeat that thing, there's nothing loose. It's like, it's so incredibly well machined. I mean, okay, there's other examples. There's Russian assault rifles from the Cold War. They're relatively loosey goosey, but there's a thing about military equipment, and it's not only weapons. It's also if you buy get some really good tactical backpacks or whatever, they're really well designed and they're really comfortable compared to the shit you get. Anyways, I mean, there's other examples as well. The shit the grunts get is probably not that well made, right? But tactical gear that's really expensive and it's made for special forces is unsurprisingly really good gear, and I don't have a problem with that, right? I'm not that's one of the things I keep saying on the show. It's divorce yourself from this thinking. The military is bad, so everything connected to the military is bad, right? That I don't want to get that. That's why I'm this was probably meant in jest, this feedback, but I still want to address that because I think that's very important. I'm the first one to admit I've been like this in the past, right? I was almost militarily anti-gun when I first started podcasts. And it took me to actually educate myself and actually go shooting to learn about this stuff and realize, this is just a tool like any other tool. It's a very well-designed tool and it's really easy to kill people with it. But so's a hammer. it's just okay, it's another level, but I try, the older I get, I don't think I get wiser. I probably get less wiser. Quoting Cody Jinks there. But what I'm trying is I'm trying to get less dogmatic about this stuff. So I'm trying to not judge somebody because he's in the military or whatever. For example, which I used to do in the past, and I think is just wrong. I used to be very, very pacifist. I used to think we don't need an army. Germany doesn't need an army. I think that is completely, that was idiotic of me. I look back at myself 20 years ago, I'm you're an idiot. Right? I mean, I had some points at the time where I was yeah, we don't really need it to defend against the Russians. I mean, that's still true today because, I'm in Germany. If the Russians decide to invade, we're fucked, right? Even in the Cold War, the NATO response was, we're going to give up, the actual official plan for NATO, for Germany was cede everything to the whatever, half of the country to the main line or whatever, where the fucking nukes are. We're going to make our stand there. If you're Germany, you're okay, so your plan to defending our country is just letting them have half of it per default and not even trying. Okay. So, not maybe Russia, but I think, I don't think NATO is a good thing anymore for us, right? And that's not about Trump. That's just, I don't think, I have some other ideas these days. I don't know. Maybe, probably not for this podcast, but, I'm politically interested in this stuff, and I think maybe we need a European army or whatever. And I certainly believe that we shouldn't be agitating Russia as Germany. Just as somebody who studied history, there's just a basic rule in German foreign policy. This is Bismarck, right? Bismarck went if you're Germany and you're looking at your foreign policy, don't fuck with Russia. It's not they're I don't know, 50 times. They have 50 times more people, and they can just send they don't even need the guns, right? They give a gun to every fifth guy, and they're still gonna win. That's basically what happened in World War II. Anyway, let's move on from that. We have another email that came in from Steve Bavalis, who gives us some. We haven't had that in a while. Some boots on the ground. This is some pandemic SARS-CoV-2 connected stuff. Oh wow, it's up. I'm getting feedback here so the problem with Twitch is that I have the auto mod is being a dick now because the Centurious was saying I don't know, did that actually? Yeah, Centurious was saying, this is actually Superuser. Superuser was saying, I love how you sneak either Bismarck or Hitler in every episode. And like the message got banned because you said Hitler. I've now allowed the term Hitler in chat because like we talk about, like, why is that term not allowed? I mean, this history. Anyway, it's because I invoked Godwin's law here. Godwin's law. Oh God, don't get me started on Godwin. Godwin's law is the stupidest thing ever, right? Somebody who said that you should never compare anything to the Nazis is dumb. That's what our job is in Germany. Literally, that's what I think. I don't really generally believe in people as a nation or whatever, having a historic responsibility. Like, I don't feel responsibility for stuff my grandfather did, who was in the Waffen-SS. But, I wasn't born. Like, how can I be responsible for this? But, the closest thing that comes next to that is, learning from your history and then educating people who were not as close to that. And I feel like it's one of the things I feel responsible for, and this is why I study history and study this kind of stuff. I feel we need to be responsible and need to educate people about Nazism and, what happened. And that's why sometimes you need to use the term Hitler, the name. Sometimes you need to do that. Anyway, yes, of course I sneak that into every episode because I studied history. I mean, I didn't get a degree, but I spent 13 semesters or whatever doing it. So it's imprinted on my brain. But anyway, let's get to Steve. Steve Bavalis with a boots on the ground report from Canada. Steve says, "Hello again, Fab. It's the former anonymous Canadian again. Due to a career change, I no longer have to worry about being anonymous, but I still encrypt all my emails because fuck Google, Cloudflare, the NSA, and the rest of the wankers." I love that. That is true. Wankers. I'm currently busy this week working through all the episodes I've missed. You're not the only one who has this. What he's about to say, I've heard from several people. I'm currently busy this week working through all the episodes I've missed, dating back to the beginning of April. Wow. There's a lot of really great content in there. I need to start taking notes when I listen to them so I can remember the shit I wanted to say. Yeah, that's... a lot of people tell me that. And I've been in this situation. I've literally taken notes during podcasts. Yeah. But I'm a journalist. I always have at least one notebook in reach, or 2 or 15. It seems that Canada and especially the province of British Columbia are going to hell in handbasket over here. We have a few hundred forest fires on the go, and a couple of small towns have burned to the ground. I'm not too sure where our provincial premier, don't you guys say premier? Provincial premier is. He's doing a pretty good job of hiding, but our federal prime minister has taken this opportunity to call another federal election for the end of next month. Our prime minister managed to take the time to come visit our province and serve beers in a bar. He was too rushed for time to check out the issues that we have going on, but he made sure to pose for some campaign photos in the city. Here's an article with a video showing his warm reception in the province. I mean, the video is sideways, but I think I can play a little bit of it, and you'll hear how warm the reception was. Wait, where's the video? Here we go. Yeah, people are not happy. I can't actually see Trudeau. I can see a lot of police. There he is. You can't recognize him because he's wearing a mask, of course. I can recognize him by his nice, by that I mean horrible tie. But as you can tell, people are not happy. Our provincial health officials have not been in hiding, although many currently wish they would go into hiding. For almost the last 2 months, life had returned to normal. You would see the odd person wearing a mask, and some stores still had hand sanitizers available, but that was it. And then Monday happened, and they announced vax passports for the province. Starting just a week before the day of the federal election, we will be required to show at least one vaccination to be able to enter most non-essential public places, and sometime in October, I forget the date, we will be required to show 2 vaccinations for those places. In addition to the regular rights issues that come with the mention of vax passports, we talked about that on the show, there are some additional issues that come with this particular one. It seems that our health officials have acknowledged that there are people that are medically unable to be vaccinated. However, they have declared that no exception will be made for these people. If you're medically unable to be vaccinated, because you don't want to die from the vaccination, there are people who can't be vaccinated or something like this because they're very high risk of actually dying. For example, because they're immunosuppressed. You will not be able to get a vax passport, and you will be denied access to these places and events. And just like the rest of the world, the best part is that even though there are no exceptions, children under 12 do not require vaccination or passports. There's no exemption. The no exemption also applies to religious reasons too, which was protected right up until Monday. The logic. By that, I think Steve means the absence of logic. Needless to say, there's been a lot of talk and action happening around this. Sites have popped up where people can register their businesses as not following the vax passport policies. One of the groups that I have watched from this week has over 27,000 members as of this moment. This site, here's a link that's also all these are in the show notes, privatecitizen.press. This site has a lot of info available, including some legal standpoints from a Canadian constitution lawyer, and a liability form that can be given to your employer if they are pushing you to get vaccinated. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to comment on that. And then Tuesday happened, and late that afternoon they announced that masks would be mandatory again the next morning. It's great, isn't it? Like next morning. It's very prepared. So there we go. Wednesday morning, all businesses require masks for you to enter. But the problem arose that very few of the businesses had been stockpiling masks once the mask mandate was removed. So most businesses did not have masks available for customers. One would think that the government would be able to give a little bit of heads up on this, but maybe it surprised them too. One thing is for sure, it would be fair to think that if the issue was so dire that a no-noticed immediate mandatory mask mandate and vax passport had to be implemented, that maybe the border would have been shut down again too. But the logic hurts my head. Tourists from out of the province and out of the country are everywhere in my small town. Wednesday evening I went to try to have dinner after work late, and half the restaurants were closed due to the newly imposed mandates, and the other restaurants were full, with their parking lots full of out-of-province and out-of-country license plates. Hell, we even have a carnival happening this week. This brings us to the current rumor spreading among the, quote, conspiracy theorists, end quote. What if the vax passport that is kicking in just prior to voting day blocks non-passport holders from being able to vote? Currently, our government says they will not declare a polling currently, our government says that they will not declare the polling stations a passport zone, but they also previously declared that they would not create mask mandates or vax passports. The really unfortunate part, and this is something to underline, by the way, the really unfortunate part is that every time the government has stated they would and I can't read. The really unfortunate part is that every time the government has stated they would not do these things, they then turned around and did them. And every time someone was labeled a conspiracy theorist for claiming that the government would do these things, they ended up being right. This is so true. And I feel like on universals, even though the situation is very different in Germany, it's exactly what happened here. It's like, I can distinctly remember talking to people. Might have even been like, was it Alex? Maybe when we talked on the show about like the flattening the curve. And I'm like vax passport is next. And everybody, I don't know if it was him. I can't remember. But it was around that time when a lot of people were like, no, you're crazy. You're not going to have vaccination passports. I'm like, it's coming. It's obvious. Yeah, no shit. One would think that blocking citizens from participating in a federal election would nullify the results of the election, but many people no longer have faith in our government to do the right thing, driven by the fact that the Federal Ethics Commissioner keeps finding our government in ethics breaches and scandals. The federal government is really pushing mail-in voting this time and has stated that it may take 2 weeks after the election to count all the mail-in ballots. One only needs to look south of the border to see the issues and distrust in the mail ballot system there. And when you combine that with the issues our governments run... Sorry. It's been a long day. And when you combine that with the issues our government-run postal system has with getting mail delivered, it does not inspire any faith in the system. Amazon routinely lists 1 month for delivery by post now, and it frequently takes that for me to get my items that were shipped from my province. Anyway, sorry for the long feedback and keep up the good work. No, don't be sorry. I really appreciate these boots on ground reports. I think it's really helpful. I do not understand the mail-in voting thing. I mean, we have a federal election coming up in Germany this month, and as I stated on the show before, I don't understand the problem of mail-in voting. I understand the problem that in Germany we have ID cards. I presume you don't have that in Canada. I think only Germany has that, but we are registered, right? So you move somewhere, it's really annoying and shitty. Like it's really annoying, but like I'm registered here and they know my address, so they can just send me. Basically, they sent me a letter saying, here you can vote, and then I go, and then on the backside it says, do you want to do mail-in voting? And I fill that out, send that back, and then I get like mail-in voting papers, and I mail them in, and it's like that is like, I mean, yes, every country has mail fraud, but voting fraud. So does Germany, but it's like really negligible, and it's been this has worked since I've been like alive, right? The first election I was able to vote, and I was 16. That was when they just changed that for like local elections. I went to the polling place once, and then next election came around, was 18 or something. I was like, fuck this, and I've been doing mail-in voting ever since. And in Germany, we have this really smart idea. You know what we do? Like they start counting them the moment they get in. So they have all the mail-in votes counted. I mean, the hard thing about that is keeping that all secret, because they can't talk about any of that because they don't want to influence the actual votes. So, but they have all the mail-in ballots counted, like at the morning of the election, right? They just have to wait till like 5 o'clock in the afternoon when all the polling places close. And that's actually how they get the first. That's actually why the first polls right after the election are like really like, so the first statistics they get when they just close the polling place are from like exit polls. So they ask people who leave, who have just voted, and ask them, and they those are pretty reliable, but then like pretty soon they get the first numbers, and that has like the actual counts, like, and then they extrapolate from that. And that is like usually rock solid because that has all like the mail-in votes in there. I mean, they obviously need to like historically, the people who do mail-in votes in Germany are not like representative for the whole electorate. So they need to kind of, over the years they figured out what biases there are, and they kind of need to fudge it. So they need to apply, fudge it sounds wrong. That's wrong. And they need to apply like, statistical things. I'm not a statistician, but to get like a representative sample, but they're really good at that. Point is, we just count them beforehand. Pro tip. So in Germany for all elections, but the federal election, the voting places, polling stations close at 5 in the afternoon. We always do this on a Sunday because everybody's off work, or most people are off work. So it's all Sunday. I think they open at 8. They close at 5 in the afternoon. And then, we know what the outcome. This year could be different because it's like really, really tight. And it's like the poll system's falling apart now because we had a grand coalition for so long that there's movement in, which is good, by the way. A grand coalition is the death of any democracy in Germany. I've said this forever. Anybody, any study politics knows. But so it's going to be interesting. But this year, but generally they know from the first minute, they know basically what the result's going to be, and they have them all counted by the next morning, every time. So you can actually do that. So there are solutions to all this kind of thing. Superuser does pretty mind-blowing that every single election you voted in Frau Merkel won. No, that is actually not correct. When was she... wait. I'm going to look this up because I'm pretty sure I voted for Schröder in that one election. Was that 98? Wait, first cabinet Merkel. No, the first cabinet of Angela Merkel was in 2005. So she won the 2005 federal election. So that's the first federal election I actually voted in. I was don't let me lie. I'm gonna look this up once again. I can't do even the easiest math in my head. I was 22. Or maybe 21. No, it was after my birthday. It was 22. So I voted for Gerd Schröder in that. Oh yeah, but you're right. You're right. I misunderstood you. Every single one I voted in, Merkel won. Yes, that is true. Well, every federal election, right? I haven't ever voted for her. I actually voted for Schröder in that one. I liked the guy. I think he had some really good ideas. He obviously had some really shitty things he implemented, but I mean, he prevented us from going to Iraq. That's one thing. But hey, yes. So elections, I don't really understand that point. To the passports, obviously, we talked about that a lot. In Germany, just a quick update, we are now implementing the 3G or 2G rules, which is... Right, all right. There's already conspiracy theory with the 5G and the vaccines, and now they're calling this 3G or 2G, which is horrible. It comes from geimpft, genesen, getestet. So in Germany, oh God, I'm so bad with grammar. What's that? Is that the infinitive? No, it's not the No, it's is it some kind of? It's if you take if you take a verb and make it an adjective, right? So impfen in Germany is vaccinating. And then if you make that an adjective, you go geimpft. That's like somebody is vaccinated. They always start with GE. Like you append GE to the word pretty much all the time, which is why you can shorten any of these with a G, right? So it's vaccinated. Geimpft is vaccinated. Genesen is, you had the disease and you're now healthy. And getestet is you're tested, right? So there's the 2G system, which you can only participate either if you're vaccinated or you have a statement that you were infected. Or the 3G is where if you don't have any of that, you can also get tested. And that's also a PCR test, which you have to pay, which is like at least 50 euros a pop. So I guess, I don't know, if it's a 2G system, then you can't be vaccinated. I don't know. I'd have to research that in Germany because historically, I'm saying, like last year with the mask mandate, we have this thing where a doctor can basically give you a letter, write you a letter and go like, this person cannot wear a mask. So you can have that, but then there were instances where they gave that to too many people, whatever, and there were instances where people didn't accept that. So I don't know how that is in Germany right now, but I just hate like they're doing like 3G, and it's a cute term again, and it's like propaganda. It's like, and they want to do this for things like public transport, right? So you have to basically be vaccinated to use public transport, and you basically have to be vaccinated because if you're infected and you're healthy again, that only counts for like 3 months. Which is idiotic. That is so dumb. Okay, just very quickly, I'm going to stop this topic after this. But like these people who are talking about these things, they're saying this is all for all our health and whatever. And they always talk about science, right? They're always like, we listen to the scientists, and you're a conspiracy theorist. You don't listen to the scientists. And these people are so dumb. They don't understand biology. They don't understand medicine, and they don't understand science, right? Because a vaccination, by definition, is basically artificially creating an infection. What a vaccination is in some way, and there are different ways, you're trying to get a body to have an immune reaction. And you're trying that because, if somebody gets sick, has an immune reaction, and they survive, then the next time the body knows how to deal with the pathogen, the virus, let's say. So what you're trying to do is to try to give the person this immunity without them being actually infected. So you're trying in a safer way to elicit the same immune response. You're trying the same way, right? So this natural immune response, by anything we know about immunology, anything that's ever been written about this shit, our best state of the art, every 99% of scientists agree, they would say, if we talk about like climate change. That tells us that a vaccination, if it's really good, is as good as natural immunity. Sometimes it's worse. In most cases, it's not even as good. Because, there's some stuff, especially done with COVID, where they basically figured out that if you get the disease and you get an immune response, your body not only reacts to the spike protein, but to other parts of the virus. Which is, that's debated, and we don't really know about that, but, it's plausible. Whereas when you get vaccinated, your body literally just produces spike protein. That's why it's safe. That's why the vaccination, you could have an allergic reaction to the spike protein, which is, I'm pretty sure happened to me twice, but, that didn't do me any, I just felt sick for a few days. So, by everything we know, a naturally getting sick and then getting healthy again is at least as good as a vaccination. It's probably better because it's the natural way your body does this. Whereas a vaccination is like artificially trying to induce your body to do that. So these people who go like, a vax passport, that's good for, I don't know, indefinitely. I think that's the idea. I think they're going to go away from that. They're going to, for some reason, they're going to say every 6 months or 12 months you need a new shot, which is also doesn't bear out scientifically, but okay. But like the reason in Germany, Vax Passport, right now you have it, you can go everywhere. If you get sick and you get healthy again, it's like 3 months. You get a paper from your doctor that says you got healthy again. That's like good for 3 months. And there's absolutely there's literally no scientific background for this. None. There is none. And the people who are like going on about this are like, oh, we are so pro-science. No, you're not. You're fucking morons. You don't know how science works. You haven't done your background. You haven't done any research. You haven't done any reading. You're just going to go, oh, we're going to do this to play it safe. Because you're fucking wankers. Anyway, just makes me mad. I think it's based on actually the end, like probably some tighter, some which is measuring the antibodies in your blood. But we know anybody who's done high school level biology knows that you have different immune responses. You have, you have an what's it called again? You have an unspecific immune response. You have different levels of specific immune responses. And antibodies are not the only way your immune system reacts, and they're not the only way your immune system remembers. So it doesn't mean that if the antibodies are gone, you're not immune anymore. Right? There are lots of viral diseases where you get one vaccination and you're immune for life. And the antibodies will be gone after 3 months or whatever. These fucking Luddites, they just drive me insane. Anyway, Superuser says, let's hope it doesn't go to 5G. Or we'll have a new round of van attacks, lol. When they attack the 5G towers. I don't, 5G is bad. Like, oh God. Don't get me started on 5G. Technology-wise, 5G is a really dumb idea as well. It's basically Wi-Fi. Like, why didn't they just, it's Wi-Fi. Like, it's really shit for what you're trying to do with the phone. You just need towers fucking everywhere because, the bandwidth is really high, but it just doesn't reach very far. That's the fucking problem. That's also why it's hilarious that everybody go, the people who literally have a Wi-Fi, they're literally sitting on a Wi-Fi router while they're taping this on a keyboard go like, 5G is really dangerous. It's almost the same frequency as the fucking Wi-Fi router you've been sitting next to for the last 20 years. You're not complaining about that, are you? It's like the same people who are like, what's it like? It's like 5G, or like whatever. Like, is the radiation is dangerous, but like they're not worried about like the airport radar that's right next to their house. People are so idiots. They're anyway. But let's get out of the ranting mood and let's wrap up the show. It isn't helping anybody. Thanks, Steve. I do really appreciate Boots on the Ground report. I think this doesn't make any sense, and it's really bad. And whatever you think about getting vaccinated and science and whatever. I mean, anybody, like, even if you don't agree on the science, I don't care. I think what everybody needs to agree on, and I don't understand, if you're not in the government right now, how you cannot agree on this, is it doesn't matter what country you are, our politicians have gravely mishandled a lot of things in the last 2 years. The things Steve pointed out when they say we're not going to do this, and then like 3 months later they do exactly that. Like the rules they've made that are not logical, that are not based on what the experts been telling them. They're just like, let's be safe and take somebody's rights away. They need to do better. They need to do it. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter who votes for what or what politician you want. This is not even a democracy thing. This isn't even about like, let's go to the polls and if the guys who think we should be wearing masks all the time from now on to the end of eternity win because they're the majority and it's a democracy, then we need to implement that, right? This is about, if you're implementing something, if you're in the government and if you're implementing something and you're saying it's based on facts, and then you don't have the facts to back that up, then you're doing a shit job and you should get removed from your job. It's just as simple as that. And we're not even talking about things here where it's like debatable, right? It's just like things where there's like clear logic errors in your I think that's what Steve was talking about anyway, right? You can't just go, right? You can go. We're making a rule, and children under 16 are exempted. That's okay. If you're the government, that's okay, right? But if you go, we're making a rule, and there are no exceptions, and then your next sentence is, well, it doesn't apply to children under 16. Then you don't belong in that job. You can't even think straight. Right? What is that? Like, anyway, thanks for the feedback. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate everybody today chiming in on Twitch as well. I think that was really cool. If you have feedback, and you're not, you listen to this as a podcast, please write in. If you think I completely, I'm full of shit on these vaccination passports, please let me know. I want to discuss this with people. Do it anonymously if you want to. I don't care. I just want good points. I want everybody. I want to discuss this. It's not like I'm right and you're wrong. This is just my opinion. I'm trying to source this and do this basis on logic and reason, but sometimes, sometimes your biases or whatever, everybody has biases. Sometimes that, impinges, compromises my reasoning, and I need somebody to write in and tell me about it. So do that. PrivateCitizen.press, contact link at the top. Superhero says, hope you can sleep all right tonight. Well, one of the reasons I do this is this actually helps me. Actually getting this out. I mean, this kind of discussions and ideas are in my head anyway. Right? It's not like Steve from Canada, right? And then I'm like, you fucking hate the government, and then I can't sleep, right? This is like stuff that goes around in my head, and I need to kind of articulate it and rant about it and discuss it with you to get out of my brain, and then I actually sleep much better. This is kind of like therapy for me. Anyway, yes, please comment. Many ways to do that. You can do it anonymously. Let's wrap this show up, and thank everybody who's involved, and tell you if you like this, if you don't think this is horrible, how you can make more of this happen if you want to. Which brings us to a segment I like to call Toss a Coin to Your Podcaster. If you like what you're hearing here and you want to support me in doing this, not maybe so much my opinion, but what I'm trying to do here is to perpetuate an approach where we analyze the stuff that's important to us for ourselves, and then have a good discussion about it. And because I think that's what's not happening right now. People just read stuff somebody else wrote, and then they just throw that around, and then everybody just shouts headlines at each other, and nobody's actually read anything. I link to lots of Wikipedia articles, but it's not like, hey, Wikipedia's right. No, they're really helpful because they have lots of primary sources. You can read them, and you find other primary sources. And then you read that, and then you inform yourself. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I know it's hard, but if you want to be part of it, if you want to support it, you can become a member of my Patreon. That's a subscription service that starts with $1 a month. It's really helpful to me because it's kind of dependable. And lots of the people who are in that club have been in there for a long time and have been supporting me for a long time. And it helps me do this and justify it, and because when I'm doing this, I'm not doing any other paid work, so it's kind of important. If you don't want to do that, if you more of a 1 hour off drive-by supporter, you can use PayPal. producers@fab.industries is the email address. And there's probably also other ways we can work out. Just contact me. This is the value for value model. It's pioneered by John C. Dvorak and Adam Curry, of course. Why didn't I remember Adam Curry's name there for a second? I don't know. Maybe it's been going on for too long. Anyway, No Agenda Podcast. They pioneered this model, which is basically involving everybody. Giving you the show for free and then involving you. If you write in, if you have topic suggestions, if you go like, oh hey, you should talk about Steve Gibson's Squirrel, Steve Gibson's Squirrel. Then you're a producer on the show, kind of like in Hollywood. And same thing if you monetarily support it, because that helps as well. Anyway, so you get it for free, then you decide what you want to do. And if you help out your producer, and I appreciate you. So let's go and thank all my producers. First of all, everybody who made this show happen by being a member of the Patreon or supporting via PayPal. Those people are Georges, Steve Hose, Butterbeans, Jonathan M. Hathy, Michael Mullen Jensen, Dave, 1I11G, Michael Small. Every time I see 1I11G, I'm like, is that Lead? Should that be Lilk? I'm going to keep saying 1I11G until somebody complains. Michael Small, Jackie Plage, Philipp Klostermann, Vlad, Jaroslav Lichtblau, IKN, Kai C.S. Bennett, Piatra, I'm all over the place tonight. Fadi Mansour, Joe Poser, Dirk Didi, Tobias, Mode 7, David Potter, Sandman616, Mika, Martin, Rodane the Insane, Rizal, Avis, Mr. Amish, Dave Umrish, Drive Zero, Ricky M, Barry Williams, Jonathan Edwards, Cam, Philip, Captain Eckert, RJ Tracy, D, Rick Bragg, Robert Forster, Super User, No Reply, and Astral C. And as I mentioned on the show, I'm recording these live on Twitch pretty much every week, usually on a Wednesday. If you want to be there, see me record it live, see my desktop, what I'm doing while I do this, you can be there, and you can subscribe on Twitch, and that supports the show as well. So these people are also producers. Some of these also are on Patreon. So, some of these are already on the list, but I'm still going to read out all my Twitch subscribers because I appreciate them very much. And of course, you can also subscribe. If you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe for free. I mean, you have to renew the subscription every month, but it's one subscription that's free to you, and I get the money as if you were normally subscribed. So it's a win-win. So thanks to my Twitch subscribers: Mike the Dane, Flash Gordo, JonathanMH_com, JonathanMH.com is his website, Sandman616, Zenith252, Centurio Purchase, Mode 7 is unavailable, El Terrestris Jim, Bacon the Pork, and Galteron. Thanks to all of you. And I'm getting out of here. I just have to thank Bytemark at bytemark.co.uk, UK hosting company. They provide the servers I host the audio files on for this podcast, so they make it possible. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to, everything I earn would just go right out the window again for bandwidth. And then I have to mention Raoul Kabazali, who wrote Acoustic Roots, which is the theme song to this podcast, and also recorded it. And I'm going to play us out with a song called Racing Hearts by Matty McGuire. It's extremely Miami Vice. And I'm choosing this song because I've been watching Miami Vice. It's on, speaking of Amazon, it's on Amazon Video.